Okay,
All
you
right,
can
good
begin.
evening. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Anova, and my partner's name is Christian Singh. And today we will present Chapter 6, Courage and Moral Leadership from the book The Experience Draft. Now, with this chapter, we will tackle lots of different aspects of courage and moral leadership. One of those will be courage and moral leadership. Now, I know this is the topic of our presentation, yes, but it is also a small aspect of the main topic at hand. Courage and moral leadership. Courage and moral leadership means having the strength to stand up for what is right, even when it is unpopular or comes with personal risk. It involves it involves acting with honesty, integrity, and responsibility, putting the well-being of others above personal gain. The true moral leaders serve rather than use people, guided by values, conscience, and a devotion to a purpose greater than themselves. Now, I think when it comes to courage, it is not about being fearless. It is about stepping forward through fear. A great example of this is General General Eric Shin. Now, General Eric Shin distinguished career reflects both his courage and moral leadership. A decorated Vietnam War veteran, wounded twice in combat, Shin went on to become the first Japanese American to serve as U.S. Army Chief of Staff. During his tenure from 1999 to 2003, he introduced the Stryker Brigade combat teams and the long-term Objective Force Modernization Plan. And though he faced controversy over the Black Beret policy, his moral courage was most evident when, before the 2003 Iran war, he testified before Congress that several hundred thousand troops would be needed to maintain post war stability, at an honest assessment that contradicted Defense Attorney Donald Rumsfeld's stance and ultimately costed him his career advancement. Later, as Secretary of Veteran Affairs in 2009 to 2014, Shin worked to end veteran homelessness and improve the post 9/11 GI Bill system. Though he struggled to adapt military style leadership to civilian agency culture, despite challenges, Shin's legacy stands as a powerful example of moral courage in leadership, speaking truth to power, prioritizing integrity, and serving others over his personal gain. He wasn't perfect, no leader is, but his legacy reminds us that courage and integrity often comes with sacrifice. The foundation of true leadership, the foundation of true leadership, confidence and commitment to values. In leadership, it is built on the foundation of confidence and commitment to values, two qualities that define a leader's strength and credibility. Confidence allows leaders to make decisions with clarity, inspire trust, and guide others, even in uncertain or challenging situations. It is not arrogance, but a quiet assurance rooted in knowledge, preparation, and self belief. Equally important is a leader's commitment to values, the ethical principle and moral standards that shape their actions and choices. When leaders consistently act in alignment with their values, such as honesty, fairness, and respect, they earn the loyalty and respect of their followers. True leadership, therefore, is not just about achieving goals, but about doing so with integrity and conviction. Confidence gives a leader the strength to act, while commitment to values ensures the actions are just, ethical, and in service to a greater good. Now, one foundation that every leaders should aspire to have in true leadership is to learn that true leadership is about serving others above themselves. And that is the next that is the title of our next topic. True leadership serving others above themselves. True leaders serve others, not themselves. True leaders serve others, not themselves, because genuine leadership is rooted in service, humility, and responsibility, not personal gain over or power. A true leader recognizes that their role is to uplift, guide, and empower those they they uphold those, creating an environment where others can succeed and grow instead of seeking recognition or controlling if they're controlling, they focus on the well-being of their team, organization, or community. This servant-minded approach builds trust, loyalty, and respect, as people are naturally inspired by leaders who put collective goals above individual ambition. By prioritizing others' needs, listening, mentoring, supporting, true leaders strengthen relationships and foster a sense of shared purpose. Ultimately, le- leadership is not about being in charge, but about taking care of those in your charge and ensuring their actions contribute to something greater than themselves. Spirit of Spirit of leadership, guiding with the values, courage, and purpose. Spirit, which embodies values, courage, and purpose, is an essential element of true leadership, complementing the mind, intellect, and reason, and the heart, empathy, and compassion. While the mind helps leaders think strategically, the heart allows them to connect with others. It is the spirit that gives their actions meaning and the moral direction. Spirit drives leaders to act with integrity, stay true to their principles, and find strength in doing what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular. It fuels their sense of purpose, guiding them towards goals that benefit not only themselves but the greater good. A leader with spirit demonstrates courage in standing up for what matters and inspires others, though authenticity and conviction. Without spirit, leadership becomes mechanical or self-serving. With it, leadership becomes a force for positive change grounded in values, vision, and inner strength. Without spirit, leadership can become mechanical, just going through the motions. But with spirit, leadership becomes transformative. It inspires others to believe in something bigger than themselves. I believe that's what makes leadership not just a skill, but a calling. The courage the courage to lead, the courage to lead, standing firm for what is right. Courage in leadership means having the strength to stand up for what is right, even even when doing so comes with personal risk or sacrifice. It is the willingness to speak the truth, make difficult decisions, and act with integrity, even when those might lead to criticism, isolation, or loss of position. True courage is not the absence of fear, but the resolve to move forward despite it, guided by one's moral principles and sense of duty. Leaders who demonstrate courage protect what is just and ethical rather than what is convenient and popular. This kind of moral bravery inspires trust and respect, showing others that integrity matters more than personal gain. Ultimately, courage defines a leader's character. It is the inner strength that transforms values into actions and ensures that leadership means remains anchored in truth and responsibility. Now, the next topic is the ethical climate in US business. Let's look at how ethics shapes an organization. What happens when leaders lose sight of themselves, or what we can do keeping integrity at the center of the business. Ethical business, ethical climate in US business. The ethical climate in US business reflects both progress and ongoing challenges, highlighting the critical role of leadership and ethics in shaping corporate behavior. In today's competitive environment, leaders face pressure to meet to meet financial goals, sometimes at the expense of honesty and social responsibility. Scandals such as Enron, Wells Fargo, and Theros have shown how unethical leadership can damage trust, ruin reputations, and harm employees and customers alike. However, many modern organizations are increasingly emphasizing ethical leadership, where transparency, accountability, and fairness guide decision making. Ethical leaders set the tone from the top, creating a culture where integrity is valued more than short term profits. They model responsible behavior and daily practices. Ultimately, the strength of a business's ethical climate depends on the moral character of its leaders, those who prioritize doing the right thing, not just because it is profitable, but because it is principled. The ripple effect of unethical leadership. When ethical lapse occurs at the top, they quickly trickle down through entire organizations, shaping a culture of dishonesty and poor accountability. Employees often take cues from their leaders, so when executives bend the rules or act unethical, it sends a message that such behavior is acceptable. This can lead to widespread misconduct, low morale, and loss of trust, both inside and outside the company. Ethical leadership, therefore, is critical. Leaders must model integrity and fairness to build a culture where doing the right thing is the norm, not the expectation. Now, when it comes to leadership, leaders have an enormous responsibility to set the tone. When they bend the rules, they send a message that ethics are optional. But when they consistently model fairness and honesty, to below it empowers everyone below them to do the same. The high cost of lo- the high cost of loss, losing trust and confidence. Scandals Scandals severely damage an organization by eroding employees' morale, customer trust, and investor confidence. When unethical behavior is exposed, employees often feel betrayed or demotivated, questioning the integrity of their leaders and the purpose of their work. Customers lose faith in the brand, leading to declining loyalty and reputation, while investors withdraw support due to fear of instability and poor governance. Rebuilding the credibility after a scandal is difficult and time consuming, proving that ethical conduct and transparency are essential for maintaining long term trust and success. Roots of unethical behavior: weakness, greed, and profit pressure. The main cause of unethical behavior in organizations often stem from personal weakness, greed, and pressure for profit. Personal weakness, such as lack of integrity, fear of standing up to authority, can lead individuals to make poor moral choices. Greed drives people to prioritize personal gain or power over fairness and honesty, while while intense pressure for profits can push leaders and employees to cut corners or manipulate results to meet targets. When these factors combine, they create an environment where ethical standards are easily compromised, highlighting the need for strong moral leadership and accountability. Leaders must summon characteristics to resist slippery slope behavior. Leaders must rely on strong character to resist the slippery slope of unethical behavior, while small compromises gradually lead to large moral failures. It often starts with minor rule bending or justifying questionable actions for convenience or profit, but over time, these small lapses can normalize dishonesty. A leader with integrity recognizes these early on warnings and has the courage to say no, even when under pressure. By upholding clear values and setting firm ethical boundaries, leaders prevent minor missteps from escalating into serious wrongdoing and protect the organization's and trust, and accountability. That's why leaders need strong characters. The courage to say no to the wrong step. I believe that moral courage is about setting boundaries early, early and not letting convenience or pressure dictate your values. Because once integrity is lost, be- because once integrity is lost, it is hard to get back. Now, next topic we have is acting like a moral leader. When it comes to acting like a moral leader in business, it's about values, not only profits. Values before profit. Acting like a moral leader means recognizing that business is about values, not just profits. True leaders understand that long term success depends on trust, fairness, and social responsibility as much as financial gain. They make decisions guided by integrity, respect for people, not just numbers on the balance sheet. By putting ethical principles at the center of their leadership, they create organizations that inspire loyalty, attract customers, and contribute positively to society while still achieving sustainable profits. Walk it like you talk it, the true measure of ethical leadership. To act like a moral leader, one must walk it like you talk it. By modeling ethical behavior every day, leaders set the standards through their actions, not just their words, demonstrating honesty, fairness, and respect in every decision. When employees see their leaders consistently upholding values, they are more likely to follow suit. The daily commitment to integrity builds trust, strengthens the organizational culture, and shows that ethics are not optional but essential for effective leadership. I personally believe that consistency is key. Employees notice when leaders consistently uphold values. The daily commitment builds trust, morale, and culture where integrity matters. Upholding moral principles. Leaders who act like moral leaders must develop, articulate, and uphold high moral principles that guide their decisions and actions. This means defining clear ethical standards such as honesty, fairness, and respect, and, and living by them consistently. According to research, the single most important factor in ethical decision making is whether leaders show a visible commitment to ethics in both their speech and behavior. Employees learn what values are important by observing their leaders. When leaders demonstrate integrity and moral conviction, they set the tone for the entire organization, building culture rooted in trust and accountability. Do the right thing for the organization and people. True moral leadership involves focusing on what is right for both the organization and all the people involved. Rather than prioritizing personal gain or short term profits, leaders who consider the well being of employees, customers, and the broader community create sustainable success. As emphasized in the research, Big business should be about values as much as performance. Leaders must recognize the importance of moral values, human, human meaning, and higher purpose alongside profit. Doing right for for the people, ensuring loyalty, fairness, and long-term organizational health. Leadership isn't just about personal gain, but true leaders think about the benefits, both the organization and the people within it, about balancing performance with values and short-term goals with long-term well-being. Drive out fear, reward ethical conduct. Ethical leaders work to drive out fear and encourage open communication with the organization, so employees feel safe to report unethical behavior or mistakes without retaliation. The research done stresses that the importance of creating systems that support ethical behavior, open doors, open door policies, clear ethical codes, and rewards for honesty. Leaders like Boeing CEO Jimmy McNary, for example, linked managers' compensation to ethical conduct to reinforce this standard. By removing fear and rewarding ethical actions, leaders foster an environment where integrity thrives and wrongdoing is less likely to occur. Treat all with fairness, dignity, and respect. A core part of moral leadership is treating everyone from the lowest to the highest with fairness, dignity, and respect. Ethical leaders understand that every person deserves to be valued and heard. The text con- contrasts that with unethical leaders who use favoritism, take credit for others' work, and diminish followers' dignity. Moral leaders, in contrast, equally promote equality, human worth, building relationships based on mutual respect. This behavior not only strengthens morale but also promotes collaboration trust throughout the organization. When it comes to leadership, it isn't selective. Essentially, when it comes to acting like a moral leader, everyone from entry level staff to senior executives deserve to be valued. I've always believed that when people feel respected, collaboration improves and loyalty strengthens. Do right when no one is watching. Moral leaders must do the right thing both privately and personally, even when no one is watching. The research explains that ethical conduct can't be situational. Leaders are role models 24/7, and their personal integrity influences how they are perceived in professional settings. Acting rightly in all areas of life builds credibility and sets a lasting example for others to follow. As one example, leaders who cut corners or bend rules when they think they won't get caught ultimately harm both their reputation and their organization's ethical foundation. When it comes to the ethical behavior, it can't be situational. Real integrity is consistent in private and public. I personally think this is where leaders are truly tested because shortcuts might seem temporary, but they erode credibility over time. Here are some examples of people and situations where they acted like moral leaders. Alfred West. Alfred P. West, founder of CEO of SEI's Investment, is an extraordinary example of ethical leadership who models the values he expects from others. He promotes integrity, accountability, and trust by personally rejecting executive privileges. He answers his own phones, works in the same open office as his employees, and refuses stock options or luxury perks. West believes in separating leaders from employees through status symbols sends the wrong message. By living his values, he maintains openness. He fosters a culture where honesty, equality, and ethical behavior thrives. Jeffrey Swartz. Jeffrey Swartz, CEO of Timberland, embodies moral leadership by combining business success with social responsibility. He built a company He built a company culture rooted in service, humility, and integrity. Employees receive 40 paid hours each year for volunteer, and Timberland hosted an annual global Silver Pulitzer Day of Community Service. Even during financial challenges, Swartz doubled volunteer time instead of cutting it, proving his commitment to moral values over profit. He believes that commerce and justice go hand in hand, showing that ethical leadership can strengthen both company culture and financial performance. Jimmy McNary. After a series of corporate scandals, Jimmy McNary, CEO of Boeing, took took decisive actions to build ethical integrity within the company. He introduced new ethics training programs for employees worldwide and linked managers' compensation to ethical leadership performance. McNary worked to ensure the ethics were embedded into Boeing's organizational culture, showing zero tolerance for violations. His leadership demonstrates that restoring trust and accountability requires strong ethical policies, transparency, and reforming the moral behavior through the consistent actions. Next, we have a leadership courage. When we think of courage, we often picture heroes or dramatic actions of bravery. But in leadership, courage is often quieter. It's the strength to do the right thing even when you're afraid of standing up for your values. Speak, Speaking the truth and taking responsibility even when it costs you something. Real courage is about strength to do what is right.
Um, you hear me? Um, I misclicked the presentation by accident and it stopped screen sharing. So yeah, you can screen share back again, please.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Our next topic is real courage, the strength to do what is right. When it comes to courage, courage isn't about the absence of fear, it's the ability to accept despite fear. In leadership, courage allows people to make tough ethical choices, speaking truth to power, and taking responsibility even when the outcome is uncertain. It transforms good intentions into meaningful actions. Essential for resisting greed and self-interest. Courage helps leaders stand firm against greed, selfish ambitions, or unethical pressure. It keeps integrity intact when personal gain or comfort might might tempt, comprom- might tempt compromise. Without courage, Leaders risk prioritizing profit or popularity over morals. When it comes to leadership courage, some of the things a person should be able to accept responsibility and not shift blame. Accepting responsibility. Courageous leaders own their actions and decisions, even when they lead to mistakes or failures. Instead of blaming others, they take responsibility, learn from experience, and model integrity, strengthening trust and credibility within the organization. Going against the status quo. Standing up for change often means changing traditional or popular opinion. Courageous leaders break away from how things are always been when those norms conflict with their ethical principles or long-term goals. When it comes to going against the status quo in organizations, they might mean challenging unfair policies or standing up to toxic behavior. In society, it might mean pushing for justice or equality. Either way, it takes courage to step out of line when someone else stays silent. Pushing beyond comfort zone. True leadership requires stepping outside what feels safe or familiar. The wall of fear. Courageous leaders take calculated risks, initiate change, and confront discomfort to achieve growth and improvement, personally and organizationally. Speaking truth despite opposition. The paradox. The Abilene paradox describes people staying silent or agreeing with bad decisions just to please others. Courageous leaders speak up when something is wrong, even if it means disagreeing with superiors or peers, protecting integrity over acceptance. Fighting for what you believe for, higher purpose. Courage means defending moral principles or causes that serves others, even when it involves personal loss or danger. Leaders guided by higher purpose, such as justice, human dignity, show the deepest form of moral courage. I believe that one of the greatest acts of courage is telling the truth when everyone else stays quiet. That's how cultures change, how mistakes are avoided, and how trust is built. Some examples of courage would some examples of courage would be Barbara Jones, civil rights student strike at 16. She led a student walkout against school segregation in 1951, sparking a legal case that became part of the Brown Five Board of Education. Her bravery shows moral courage against injustice. Clive Warlow, as president of Volkswagen America, he raised his career by replacing rigid top-down control with trust-based leadership, empowering managers and employees, changing Volkswagen's strict heritage. Clashes, satire, child labor activist. Despite threats and violence, he continues to fight for children's rights in India, freeing thousands from border labor. His courage reflects unwavering commitment to justice and human dignity. Now, at this point, I'd like to invite Christian Singh to share their insights on courage and moral leadership.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. All right. Moral leadership today. Moral leadership is essential for today's business and political landscape, where scandals and self-interest have often undermined public trust. It emphasizes dealing with ethics, values, and a sense of responsibility to other, prioritizing what is right over what is convenient or profitable. Moral leaders demonstrate self-control, empathy, and authenticity, maintaining high ethical standards under pressure and foster a culture of trust and openness. By setting clear ethical standards, making transparent decisions, modeling the behaviors they expect, and showing the courage to confront wrongdoings, moral leaders inspire others and support long-term organizational success. The widespread ethical failures and the need for moral leadership. So a number of high-profile ethical scandals in recent decades have demonstrated the profound harm that moral leadership can do to businesses, economy, and public confidence. A corporate culture of greed, deceit, and oh my God, inaccurate ethical monitoring was revealed by scandals like Enron, WorldCom, and Tyco International. Now I know Nova talk about these, like she bring it up early, but I going to go in more details, right? So international in the early 2000s, while political corruption trialed throughout, they will have further shown how widespread the issues in leadership integrity is. So we have Enron, once hailed as a forward-thinking energy behemoth. Enron Corporation went bankrupt in 2001 following the discovery of the widespread accounting fraud. Executive used special purpose entities, SPEs for short, to hide debts and inflate revenues, and they utilized mark-to-market accounting to report future gains and current incomes. Executives like CEO Jeffrey Skilling and CFO Andrew Foster were at the forefront of these dishonest tactics, which deceived both employees and investors. Enron declared bankruptcy once the deception was discovered, destroying thousands of jobs and more than $6 billion in shareholder values. Sarbanes-Oxley Act was created to increase corporate openness, and as a result of scandals, which also brought Enron's auditing company, Arthur Anderson. This case serves as an example of moral failing of CEOs who prioritize stock performance and personal riches over integrity, openness, and shareholder stock welfare. Okay, so WorldCom. So shortly after Enron's, the massive telecom company WorldCom had another multi-billion-dollar company crisis by capitalizing operational expenses rather than disclosing them as a cost. CEO Bernard Ebers and other executives overstated profits more than 11 billion. One of the worst bankruptcy in American history resulted from the deception, which also concealed the company's deterioration, financial situation, and misled investors. Ebers received a total of 25 years in jail term after being found guilty of the security frauds. The story of WorldCom shows how pressure to reach irrational financial goals, coupled with a lack of moral commitment at the top of the corrupt at the top may corrupt a whole company. Leaders place a reputation and investors' confidence ahead of integrity rather than setting an example of moral decision making. Okay, so next one, international Tyco. Dennis Kozulski, the CEO of Tyco International, and Mark Swartz, the CFO, were convicted of embezzling hundreds of millions of dollars from the corporation. The opulent personal lives, which include expensive residence, beautiful art, and costly festives like 2 million birthday celebration in Sardinia, were founded by the company cash. Later, both executives were found guilty and fraud and grand larceny, my bad. The controversy demonstrated how organizational principles may be distorted and unethical behavior can become standard throughout a corporation when moral corruption occurs at the top. Tycho's failures demonstrated how international decisions can disregard the laws of one's own benefits, rather than the lack of knowledge are frequently the cause of the ethical failures. Political scandals. Beyond the realm business, public trust in leadership has also been undermined by political corruption. For instances, Mensalolo incident in Brazil in 2005 revealed a massive vote buying operation involving high-ranking government officials, which resulted in several convictions. Similar to this, we have the Liberal Democratic Party financing scandal in Japan 2024, exposed undisclosed political donation and financial mismanagement. Sparking recognition and public indignation, these instances demonstrate how power abuse, secrecy, and the lack of accountability are common cause in unethical behavior in politics, just as they are in business. Public trust in leaders has eroded. Many see CEOs as dishonest. So in recent years, the public faith in leaders, particularly corporate executive, has drastically decreased, with many increasingly considering CEOs to be dishonest and self-serving. According to the 2025 Elman Trust Barometer, around 61 to 70% of the participants think government representatives and corporate executives purposely mislead the public by making incorrect or exaggerate claims. Only roughly 1/3 of those who feel socially or economically disadvantaged express any trust in business leaders, and trust in CEOs has declined in majority of countries. This persuasive distrust in reflection or of rising dissatisfaction with corporate greed, inequality, and the idea of CEO profits before people. Similar trends were seen in earlier research. According to the 2018 Edelman Trust Barometer, majority of the respondents said CEOs were more driven by self-interest, by a sincere desire to have a good social effect. Public trust has been further damaged by the frequent scandals that associate corporate leadership with dishonesty and corruption, such as those involving Enron, Wilcom, and furthermore political polarization, pervasive disinformation that have increased popular skepticism against authority officials in general. Honestly, dedication to others and integrity are the foundation of moral leadership. CEOs must show true transparency, justice, and accountability in order to regain the trust of the constituents. People expect consistent ethical behaviors that matches what leaders could say. They are no longer persuaded by the pretentious remarks. Today, leaders can only start to rebuild public trust in business and leadership by acting genuine moral integrity. Ethical leadership, delivering values despite pressure. So ethical leadership means leading with honesty, integrity, and fairness, living one's value even when it is difficult or unpopular. Ethical leadership are guided by one inner moral compass that directs them to do what is right rather than what is convenient or profitable. This kind of leadership is more than obeying rules. It is about being consistent in both action and value. Ethical leaders show courage by standing firm on their principles despite pressure from financial demands and authority figures or public opinion. Such bravery sometimes require giving up on giving up something personal. Ethical leaders reject the urge to sacrifice their integrity in the face of intense pressure to preserve the power produce outcome. Moral bravery is the ability to stand by one's conviction even when doing so puts one's jobs or reputation in jeopardy. This idea is shown by historical leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, who uphold their moral principles in the face of adversities. According to research, moral leadership promotes dedication, trust, and workplace culture. Leaders can operate in accordance with their declared the belief inspired more loyalty and motivation from their workforce. On the other hand, leaders can lose credibility and lower morale when they compromise ethics for temporary benefits. Therefore, consistency, demonstrating integrity via deeds rather than perfection is a goal of ethical leadership. Rebuilding respect and credibility in a world when public faith in leadership is eroding, is required to uphold one's principle in the face of pressure. Leaders must put moral values into action and set examples. So organizational culture and followers' behaviors are greatly influenced by the leaders who truly live out their moral principles and lead by example. So according to ethical leadership theory, establishing trust, justice, and integrity in organization is largely dependent on the behaviors of leaders, especially on the consistency of the word and acts. Leaders provide an example for followers to follow, intimate, and absorb when they behave in the way that reflects publicly declared principles like integrity, equity, respect, and responsibility. For instances, according to Hamoud Aldehian, moral upright leaders tends to raise employees' opinion of corporate fairness, which in turn encourage moral behavior on the part of those employees. In this sense, moral values are more than just a theoretical idea. They actively influence how individuals inside the organization act. So, furthermore, under the pressure, leaders who have a strong or moral identity, that is, who consider morality as a core as to who they are more likely to behave according to their principles, and this authenticity increasing their impact. Stronger moral climates are created when leaders believe in them. This encourages others to voice ethical concerns and act morally among themselves. According to qualitative research, for example, leaders who have made the decision to put fairness or the welfare of stakeholders first, even when doing so goes against the short-term organizational rules or pressure, have clarified their value frameworks and taught true ethical quandaries and seen as moral leaders with moral authority. According to studies on moral modeling, leaders who put others' need ahead of their own share responsibilities during difficult times, avoiding taking on unfair credit, uphold integrity, and encourage positive work behavior from their employees. Many outcomes, including commitment, work satisfaction, and ethical behaviors, are mediated by these behaviors, which are also increased leaders, members in charge, and promote value congruence between leaders and followers. What leaders do to make things go wrong? When leaders choose ego, money, and personal ambition over moral obligation, they frequently go away. These executives behave selfishly after riches, fame, or power. They set a bad example that permits the whole organization. Their action gives followers the impression that deceits, manipulation, and injustice are legitimate ways to succeed. Employees lose trust in management as a result, and moral lines become lazy, creating a poisonous culture. Unethical leaders, arrogant, self-serving, dishonest, unfair, blaming, shifting. So, unethical leaders frequently displayed features including arrogance, self-serving conduct, dishonesty, injustice, and blaming, shifting, all of which contribute to the moral operational failures of firms. Leaders can exhibit arrogance, silence, criticism, and aligned leaders undermine collaboration and trust by refusing to acknowledge their own errors, disregarding the opinions of others. Poor judgment and moral choices are frequently the result of this inflated ego. The result is made by issue is made worse by self-serving conduct in which leaders prioritize their own interests over the well-being of other companies in order to get personal benefits like money, fame, or power. According to Lynch and Benson, self-serving leaders lose their effectiveness over time because they take advantage of followers to further their own goals, which undermines moral loyalty. Another characteristic that distinguishes unethical leadership is dishonesty in order to stay in power. Dishonest leaders mislead people, hide mistake, and misrepresent the facts. According to Resec Erat, dishonesty normalizes the deception throughout the companies and threatens the ethical climate. Similar to this, unfairness undermines the psychological safety and employees' trust when it manifests as a partially prejudice and or inconsistent treatment. Perceived injustice reduces the motivation and engagement and breeds animosity among team members, according to research published in Frontiers in Education. By shifting the blame for errors, unethical leaders are able to evade accountability. They blame inferiors or outsider forces rather than taking responsibilities for their mistakes, which inhibits learning and increasing anxiety. Such leaders lack the guts to confront reality, eventually taint the organization's moral core. On the other hand, ethical leaders exhibit traits that are necessary for trust, long-term success, such as humility, dishonesty, fairness, and accountability. So, the ethical leaders, humility, or humble, honest, fair, and responsibility, and being respectful. So, humility, honesty, fairness, and accountability, and respect are characteristics of ethical leaders and are cornerstones of moral and successful leadership. These leaders prioritize service over self-interest and act for a higher ethical purpose because they always act in a way that consists with their statements and principles. They foster loyalty and trust. All right, so let's discuss humility. So humility is a key component of moral leadership right? Humble leaders respect others' opinions, own their own limits, put the benefits of the group above their ego. These leaders, according to Collins, 2001, are the level 5 leaders, people who blended professionally with personal humility. Such humility makes followers feel appreciated and controlled by promoting teamwork, psychological safety, and candid communication. According to research by Owens and Heckman, modest leaders encourage higher levels of participation and learning because they own up to their own errors and treat everybody equally. Honesty. Another essential component of moral leadership is honesty. A leader's credibility is based on their sincerity in both their words and deeds. Honesty lays the groundwork for trust. Ethical leaders speak up directly with followers, own their mistakes, and they are forthright about difficulties. In addition, preventing false information, its integrity fortifies the moral culture. Since followers are emulate their leaders' honesty, research by Walumba et al. Demonstrates how moral conduct among staff members is enhanced by leaders who are sincere and genuine. Fair and ethical leader dedication to justice and equality is shown in their fairness. Fair leaders particularly treat everybody equally and make choices based on merit. Fairness preserves respect within the business, avoid animosity or division, while unfair practices frequently lead to mistrust and employees turnover, fair employees are more motivated and devoted. Treating people, according to organization psychological research, treating people fairly increase their commitment and happiness, which leads to improved performance. Responsibility. Being responsible is another defining quality of moral leadership. Responsibility involves accountability, owning one's decision and their consequences. Ethical leaders do not shift blames or make excuses. Instead, they accept mistakes as learning opportunities. Responsible leaders set an example by doing what is right even when it is costly. These responsibilities extends beyond the organization to society at large, as leaders must consider the ethical implications of their action for all stakeholders. Respect. In every encounter, moral leaders show respect. Respect entails appreciating other viewpoints, cultivating a culture of respect, and acknowledging the intrinsic value of every individual. Respect improves relationship, promotes candid communication, and give individuals the confidence to express their opinions. Respectful leaders foster an atmosphere. Uh, Respectful leaders foster an atmosphere where everyone feels valued and included by actively listening and demonstrating empathy. Respect increases followers' commitment to common objectives and their own adherence to moral principles. Leaders set their tones, the example shape employees' behavior. So the most effective way for leaders to affect organizational behaviors is by setting an example. The idea of tone at the top emphasizes how employees frequently emulate the attitude and the behaviors displayed by the leaders. Leaders that exhibit honesty, equity, responsibility, and the abundantly evidence that shows that moral behaviors is respected and expected. According to social learning hypothesis, individuals watch and emulate reputable role models, particularly those in position of power. So Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Satya Nadella is a fantastic example from real life, a real life example, right? So the company culture was changed from one internal rivalry to one of empathy and cooperation, which Nadella took leadership in 2014. By owning up to his faults and urging staff members to learn it all rather than to know it all, he continuously set an example of transparency and humility. Because of his action, Microsoft culture has changed, becoming more inclusive, innovative, and trusting. Nadila example demonstrates how leaders stone at the top may change organizational norms from compliance motivated by fear to engagement motivated by values. Employees, on the other hand, frequently justify unethical behaviors when executives don't live up to their declared values, as when the case when Enron and Wells Fargo. This is because they observe the superiors acting in this manner. In contrast, moral leaders encourage psychological safety and motivate people to behave honorable, even in the face of adversity. Doing the right gets ingrained in the organizational identity when moral leadership is maintained over time. Silence in the face of wrongdoing, support of unethical behavior. Silence does not simply reflect fear of indifference when it comes to unethical behavior. When it occurs in the organization, at work, or elsewhere, it's encourage support and normalize immoral behavior. Based on current research, the following processes explains how silence might interrupt as tacit supports for misconduct. So we have quiescent silence results from moral rage that is not addressed. So it have this one research examine how immoral leaders' conduct might cause more moral eerie in workers by Gafford and Saha. However, employees frequently opt to remain silent, a practice known as quiescent, quiescent, quiet, even while they are aware that something is wrong and feel more moral anger. This inaction permits the conduct to go unpunished. The association between observing moral leadership and remaining mute is mediated by moral rage, according to the study. Depletion of resources and expletive leaders. Another recent study examined ethical silence under expletive leaders, which is defined as keeping quiet about moral or ethical concerns in the organizational or work-related procedures. Employees lose psychological resources when they are leaders that are exploitive because their employees lose purpose and their moral potency, the capacity or confidence to act properly declines. As a result, they keep quiet. Here remaining silent is a risk of avoidance tactic. Cultures of tolerance and moral disengagement. Employees start to believe that bad behavior is acceptable in organizational environment when leaders or the company appear to tolerate errors of unethical activities, especially minor ones. According to a study on green silent behavior, employees are less likely to report or speak up about ethical or environmental issues when leaders are accepting of mistakes environmental initiative. This is partially because they are no longer considered the issue to be serious, and partially because they disengage morally. Silent trust and organizational justice. Organizational justice and organizational silence among nurses are greater when nurse managers are viewed as moral leaders. According to research conducted in the Chinese healthcare nursing environment. On the other hand, workers are more likely to keep quiet about the wrongdoing when they believe the lack of justice or trust. In these situations, being silent encourages unethical conduct in two ways. It keeps problems from being brought up, preventing them from being remedied, and it sends the message to the others that speaking out is dangerous or pointless. Public perception and managerial silence on injustice. Beyond eternal organizational settings, silence by leaders when they see injustice, especially towards odd groups, shape how they are perceived. Leaders who speak up on somewhat justice remain silent, on the other hand, are viewed as biased or less supportive on a marginalized group. Their silence is interpreted as complicity. This social perception reinforces norms that tolerates injustice is acceptable, particularly if those power remains silent. Becoming a moral leader. Acting like a moral leader highlights that moral leadership is about continuously demonstrating principles by deeds rather than preaching them. Moral leaders provide an example of honesty, bravery, and compassion for others to follow. Moral leadership is acting morally even in the face of temptation, resistance, or personal expense. It entails exhibiting integrity, equity, and accountability in choices and interaction in order to gain followers' respect and confidence. Moral leaders are also driven by the moral compass that puts the benefit of group ahead of their own they go beyond following the laws or organizational regulations by making sure their words, belief, and deeds are consistent. They demonstrate authenticity. Their fans are more likely to treat them when they are consistent. Moral leaders necessitate bravery or the will to stand up for what is right, even when doing so may be controversial or dangerous. True leaders are distinguished from others who only possess power by their moral bravery. Moral leadership, distinguishing right from wrong. Knowing right from wrong, having the guts to do what is right are the cornerstones of moral leadership. Moral leadership is about integrity, conscience, and devotion to others. It is not only about following rules, universally ethical values like fairness, honesty, regard for human dignity serve as a guidance for moral leaders. They make choices based on a moral conviction rather than convenience or self-interest. This clarity results from working from principled thinking and cultivating a strong moral compass as outlined in Colesberg's phrase of moral good. Moral leaders, however, is about doing the right thing, even if it is challenging and not just knowing what is right, you know. So moral bravery is the capacity to maintain moral principles in the face of adversity or danger. Paul Pullman, the former CEO of Unilever, demonstrated this by putting social responsibilities and sustainability ahead of intermediate financial gain, demonstrating that moral leadership can foster both prosperity and integrity. Leaders that behave morally create a strong example that influence the culture of their organization. Consistent ethical behaviors fosters the trust and responsibility, and employees are likely to imitate leaders' action than their words. In the end, moral leaders is about choosing to act morally because it is right and ethical, not because it is convenient or financially advantageous. Uplift others. Immoral leadership diminishes others. Moral leadership is about uplifting others, not only about doing what is right and wrong. People are inspired, strengthened, and brought out of their best by moral leaders. They cultivate trust, respect each person's worth and dignity, and provide settings that give followers a sense of empowerment and worth. On the other hand, unethical and immoral leaders still instill dread and skepticism while undermining self-esteem and confidence. Moral leaders utilize their position and authorities to help others, whereas moral leaders exploit it to further their own agendas. Moral leaders as empowerment. Moral people are uplifted by moral leadership because of its integrity, humility, and service. A moral leader is aware that stewardship, the need to support and develop others, is what true leadership is all about, not just power or control. By acknowledging these contributions of others, offering chances for development, and treating everyone fairly and with respect, these leaders foster trust. In addition to raising spirits, this empowerment fortifies the ethical cultures. Under moral leadership, staff members feel free to express their thoughts, make moral decisions, and strive for greatness. Immoral leadership and its destructive impact. In contrast, immoral leadership uses fear, deception, and self-serving action to devaluate others rather than encouraging their followers. Immoral leaders frequently take advantage of them out of their pride, adversaries, and insecurity. They undermine integrity and moral by denying credit, falsifying facts, and punishing dissent. Such leadership eventually leads to alienation, distrust, and resentment. In these settings, followers learn to defend themselves instead of working together or coming up with new ideas, which hurts the organization as a whole. So we have here as an example, Travis Kalanick, the former CEO of Uber, is a compelling example. Right? Although his aggression to management approach is first spurred expansion, it also produced a poisonous atmosphere marked by misogyny, intimidation, and unethical behavior. Kalanick resigned in 2017 as a result of his action, which included shouting at staff members disregarding harassment allegation and putting output ahead of morals. This demonstrates how unethical leadership may disvalue and belittle others, harming the company and its member in the long run. Transformational effects of uplifting leadership. Moral leadership inspires people with compassion and vision to addition to moral behavior. Moral leaders are individuals who uphold the highest value of humanity, serve others, and build community. By their deeds, workplace becomes space of mutual respect and purpose, bringing optimization and meaning. Moral leaders can help followers reach their greatest potential by putting the benefits of the group ahead of their own interests. People like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela are prime examples of this type of leadership, which leaves a legacy of moral disadvancement, solidarity, and empowerment. So examples of this could be like we have Roland Wallenberg. So Viktor Frankl and Roland Wallenberg's lives are powerful examples of moral leadership. Example, in the face of moral gloom, inspire others with bravery, compassion, and integrity. Roland Wallenberg, a Swedish ambassador, showed moral leadership during World War II by putting his life on a danger to save over 100,000 Hungarian Jews from the Holocaust. He established safe homes under the Swedish protection and issued thousands of protective transport using the diplomatic power to provide asylum to those who were persecuted by the Nazis. Wallenberg's leadership was based on his moral conviction rather than his position of authority or prestige. He worked selfishly to protect human life and dignity because he believed that all people were valuable. His illustration exemplifies the definition of moral leadership, which is the dedication to upholding moral principles even when doing so puts you in a peril. Innumerable lives were improved by Wallenberg's deeds, which brought hope and faith where they had previously been only in despair. Similar to this, the Holocaust survivor psychiatrist Viktor Frankl showed moral leadership by being able to locate and motivate meaning in the midst of pain. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms to choose one attitude in any given circumstances, in any given set of circumstances. According to Viktor Frankl, in 1956, in Man's Research for Meaning, he urged his followers to his fellow inmates to maintain their humanity by choosing compassion and purpose over resentment and despair. Even when they were detained by Nazis, concentration camps, by demonstrating that freedom and dignity endure despite this degrading circumstances. Frankl moral fortitude inspire others. Leadership style was in the line with DAFT's theory that moral leaders exhibits bravery, integrity, and empathy while acting from their inner convictions. Frankl moral example gave others a purpose around him, hope, and moral opposition in a time when Moral leaderships strive to destroy life and dignity. All right, so moral development stage. So the theory of moral growth by Lawrence Kohlberg, which divides the moral reasoning into three major levels. So we have pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. Is the source of the paradigm frequently employed by the leadership studies. Each illustrates the more complex ways in which individuals determine what is right and what is wrong. So we have the level one, pre-conventional, self-interest avoid punishment. So moral judgment are motivated by direct implications to the ego at a pre-conventional level. People concentrate on getting rewards, stage two, or avoiding punishment, stage one, instead of being internalized standards. Instead of being internalized standards, rules are viewed as external restraints. A person at this level, a person at this level of leadership is only moral when following the rules and help them, or when breaking them have unfavored effects. Empirical, so this is the support according to 2011 studies in the leadership quarterly. Managers with higher moral reasoning scores perform better in both extra role or in role behaviors than those with lower pre-conventional scores. Meanwhile, pre-conventional managers were more likely to employ transactional approach that was centered on the rewards and punishment. Level two, conventional follow rules, social norms. Majority of individuals lives at typical level. People at this fellow expectation at this level follow expectations, whether they be those significant individuals, company policies, or society standards. Morality in this context refers to duty fulfillment, devotion, and upholding order. At this level, leaders strive to maintain the status quo, respect the law, and satisfy eternal expectation. Although their moral thinking is more ingrained in society, they frequently do not question the unfair con- conventions. So it's a illustration from the study, although not necessary from innovation but morally challenging activities. The same 2011 studies, the leader collective quarterly, demonstrate how managers with traditional or moral reasoning had more group cohesive and were evaluated higher by superiors and subordinates for social conformity, earnings, role performance. Level three, post-conventional, internal principles, justice, and common good. So individuals are directed by eternal ethical principles, justice, human rights, and the well-being of all. At this principle of moral good, they hold that doing the right thing, even when it goes against the law, the rules, and the social conventions, is important. Post-conventional leaders focus on the choices of universal values, co-science, and the welfare of the group. So our support to this is the leadership quarterly research showed how managers with post-conventional leaders level were more likely than those with lower levels to display transformational leadership traits such as inspirational, ethical, and self-interest free. Furthermore, using Kohlberg's model, the study of moral implication of leadership, transformative insight discovered a relationship between people and self-reported leadership and their moral leadership style and the moral development stage. Those with higher moral reasoning scores tended to describe more transformational principle leadership framework. Servant leadership. Let me say something. Servant leadership as a moral form of leadership grounded in humility, empathy, and the service to others, unlike leaders who seek personal gains or authority. Servant leaders view leadership as steward leadership, a responsibility to help others grow and to serve the greater good. Robert Greenleaf first proposed the idea containing that whether or if individuals under one leadership grows healthier, wise, freer, or more autonomous is the real measurement of a leader. Trust, empathy, and moral influence are more important to servant leaders than power, more because it prioritizes justice and consideration for others. Servant leadership has also shown to increase employee trust, dedication, and moral conduct. Servant leadership is exemplified by historical personalities like Mother Teresa and Nelson Mandela. Both demonstrated that moral leadership is based on service and not rank by using their influence to empower and encourage people rather than to control them. Therefore, true leadership is about utilizing authority to help others rather than to get what they want. Shift focus from control, participation, stewardship, and service. So more relation and service-oriented models have replaced strictly hierarchical power based on approaching leadership theory. The process shows a deeper moral development in which leaders perceive their duties and obligations as they go from control to participation, then stewardship, and ultimately to service. From control to participation, prioritizing hierarchy, discipline, and compliance. Earlier leadership's philosophies were control-oriented. Such command and control techniques, however, frequently stifle trust and innovation. The International Institute for Management Development claims that contemporary leadership places a strong emphasis on employee engagement, promoting teamwork, shared decision-making, respect for each worker opinion. Participatory leadership promotes inclusive and empowers individuals to take responsibility for results, which boosts creativity and motivation. So, for instance, servant leaders engage in participatory leadership by involving others in decisions and encouraging open dialogue. According to Penn State Extension article leading to serve, this change represents a shift from team dynamic to cohesion, to collaboration and mutual respect, from participation to stewardship. Leaders start to grasp stewardship, the need to look out for organization and its members. Once they embrace participation, building trust, distributing authorities, and making sure that leadership promotes a common good are components of stewardship. Stewardship are defined by blocks, and subsequently reaffirmed by C-Point Center, is choosing service over self-interest. It pushes leaders to relinquish authority and promote responsibility via empowerment rather than intimidation. From stewardship to service. Service is a principle of moral leadership. When leaders do action motivated by sincere concern for the development and welfare of others, This is what servant leadership is all about. So, the Harvard program on negotiation states that servant leaders put their following's needs first and assist them in realizing their potential in order to foster enduring loyalty and trust. In a similar vein, servant leaders focus on empowering people rather than just commanding them, according to IMD, which encourages creativity and psychological safety in groups. This evolution is supported by empirical studies, according to the comprehensive review by Kanavesi. Servant leadership dramatically raises the workers' well-being, trust, and engagement, according to the recent studies on work ethics and servant leadership. Service-oriented executive improve company cultures and lessen burnouts. Authorian leadership, top to down. Acratic or authoritarian leadership is typified by centralized decision making, stringent top-down control, and little input from subordinates. These leadership styles place a strong emphasis on hierarchy, discipline, and compliance. The top of the source of the power and authority, and the followers are supposed to obey without inquiry. Although this strategy can be effective in emergencies, situations, or when prompt judgment are required, it frequently stifles followers' moral development, inventiveness, and trust. Centralized power and limited participation. So the fundamentals tenet of authoritarian leadership is that the leaders is the expert. The top is where the most decisions are made. Communication usually goes from leaders to subordinates. Leaders have strict control over procedures, guidelines, and results thanks to this framework. Although this can guarantee responsibility and consistency, when workers feel their opinions are not heard, it frequently results in low moral and disengagement. So the DAFT textbook 2008 asserts that leaders also prioritize controls over cooperation, fosters an atmosphere in which followers behave more out of fear, retribution, and than out of common dedication to principles. According to research from the Indeed Career Guide, authoritarian leadership is less effective in environments that depends on innovative teamwork and employee intuitive. Yet, it cannot occasionally boost short-term productivity, especially in high-pressure or military situation. According to Cherry, 2023, very well mind highlights that this leadership style tends to create reliance, low motivation, and deter people from exercising moral and creative intuitive, psychological, and ethical implication. According to Colesberg, pre-conventions phase of moral development, when conduct is dedicated by reward and punishment rather than internal principles, authoritarian leaders is consistent with moral leadership. Instead of acting moral because it is right, employees in such companies may comply eternally to escape punishment. Leaders who use control or terror to motivate their followers or run the danger of encouraging unethical conduct, since they teach them to follow the orders rather than exercise critical thoughts or moral responsibility. Authoritarian CEOs frequently erode psychological safety or feeling that team member may voice ideas, concerns without fear or reprisal. According to Harvard Business Review, Gallo 2016, open communication or moral bravery are undermined by the lack of trust, which results in obedience rather than moral initiative. This can eventually lead to poisonous corporate cultures where individual fear punishment or retaliation, which prevents misconduct of being confronted. So some examples of this will be Kalanick again, because yeah, organization or governments con- consolidate power or suppress criticism are examples of authoritarian leadership in contemporary contemporary era. For example, Travis Kalanick, the former CEO of Uber, came under fire for creating an aggression creating top-down culture from value development and compliance over moral conduct and worker welfare. Although his leadership sped up growth, it has resulted in numerous allegations, harassment, unethical behaviors, illustrating how control-based leadership may provide outcomes at the expense of moral rectitude. On the other hand, companies that choose servant and participatory leadership styles instead of authoritarian ones frequently see increase in ethics, creativity, and engagement. This changes this change reflects in the moral progression from perceived power to shared purpose and service. Limitation of authoritarian leadership. While authoritarian leadership may be appropriate in specific circumstances, such as during crisis or in military, its limitation outweighs its benefits in modern organization. Over reliance on top-down control stifles personal responsibilities, moral reasoning, and trust. It undermines the instinctive motivation as employees become compliant followers rather than creative contributors. Ethically, authoritarian leadership diminishes others than fostering fair rather than empowerment. Moral leaders must inspire through example and service, not through domination. Authoritarian leaders, by contrast, often operate from the mindset of control and self-interest, value incompatible with moral leadership. Participative leadership, employees involved, but leaders still decide. Collaborative management and authoritarian control are separate by participatory leadership. While including staff members in decision making and problem solving, participative leaders maintain ultimate control. This strategy ensures responsibility and direction while valuing followers' opinion, giving workers a voice to give them complete that decision making authority strikes a balance between empowerment and leadership control. Participatory leadership encourages the input from team leaders while the leaders make the final call. This is an inclusive strategy, encourages motivation, involvement, and trust. Employees who feel heard are more dedicated to their objective and more inclined to contribute creative ideas. To prevent delay or indecision, leaders must closely monitor involvement. From a moral perspective, participatory leadership is consistent with Kohlberg's typical stage of moral development, in which people respect shared responsibilities and collaboration. Leaders that promote discussion provides an example of fairness, respect, and two qualities that are essential to moral leadership. So, an example of this, we have Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, is a strong example of participative leader. Since becoming CEO of 2014, in 2014, Barra has worked to create a culture of transparency, collaboration, and shared decision making. She regularly holds a town hall meeting and open forums where employees are encouraged to share feedback, raise safety concerns, and suggest improvement to companies' processes. By seeking input from employees at a level, especially those on the manufacturing floor, Barra ensures that important operational decisions are informed by real experiences, practical insights. This approach reflects the essence of participative leadership, valuing employees' contribution while maintaining the final decision-making authority. Stewardship, shared responsibilities, empowerment, partnership. A moral and cooperative style of leadership, stewardship places a strong emphasis on empowerment, cooperative, and shared responsibility. Leadership that is centered on responsibility and service, in which leaders can take care of organization and its members rather than wielding power. Stewardship leaders see themselves as accountable for long-term and prosperity of organization and the well-being of others. So, example of this. So an example of this, a strong real-life example of stewardship leader can be Aaron Feuerstein, the former CEO of Malden Mills. Oh, okay, my bad. Empowerment and collaboration are components of stewardship leaders. Empower staff members to make decisions and support their ideas. Stewardship leaders serve as coaches and facilitators, helping others realize their greatest potential according to mine too. Stewardship is the partnership rather than patriarchy, in which leaders and followers work together as equals to accomplish common objective. An ethical culture based on respect and purpose is established when leaders empowers rather than control. So an example of this is a strong real life example of this is of stewardship leadership can be seen in Aaron Feuerstein, the former CEO of Malden Mills, after a devastating factory fire in 1995. Feuerstein made an extraordinary decision to continue paying 3,000 of his employees their full wages and benefits for 6 months while the plant was rebuilding. This action reflected his deep sense of shared responsibility, moral accountability, and commitment to the long-term well-being of both his employees and the local community. Rather than prioritizing profits and exercising strict control, Feuerstein embodied empowerment and partnership, viewing his role as a steward serving others than as a ruler commanding them. His leadership cultivated trust and loyalty, as employees felt valued and supported during the time of crisis. Feuerstein action demonstrates the essence of stewardship leadership, a model rooted in service, collaboration, and ethical responsibilities. Servantship. Leaders put service before self, listen, inspire, trust, and nurture others. The principle of moral leadership is demonstrated by servant leadership, in which leaders put the needs of others before their own interests and concentrate on their own development. Servant leaders transcend self to serve the needs of others, help others grow, and provide opportunities for others to gain material and emotional. By placing a strong emphasis on moral stewardship, empathy, and humility, this strategy stands back in stark contrast to authoritarian or self-serving leadership. Service before self. So servant leaders don't behave in order to acquire status or power, but rather because they want to help others. According to the concept creators Robert K. Greenleaf, the servant leader is the servant first, which means helping others come from naturally to leaders. Helping others come from naturally to leaders. Instead of controlling achievements, these leaders see their jobs as facilitating it. True moral leadership happens when leaders use their authority to serve others rather than dominate them. So an example of this is Robert Townsend, the former CEO of American Express and the Avis, who empowered others rather than exerted control. Townsend supported providing individuals the freedom to make their own decision, removing needless red tape and having the faith in staff. In the book of the organization, he explained his leadership philosophy, which focused on helping staff members so they could be better serve consumers. Avis became a competitive became competitive people focused business as a result of servant ethos. Listening and building trust, listening, valuing others' people's opinion, and fostering empathy to establish trust is a characteristic of servant leadership. Servant leaders listen to others, show genuine concern, and build relationship based on trust and respect. The co-founder of People's Soft and Workday, Duffield, Duffield, David Duffield is a shining illustration of this idea. Duffield emphasizes the executive should do the right by the people and based people's soft culture on empathy and openness. Forbes claims that people soft became one of the Silicon Valley's most admired corporation as a result of Duffield's servant leadership approach, which fosters strong employees loyalty and trust. His practice of prioritizing and listening, treating staff members like family showed how empathy can boost morale and propel a company forward. Inspiring trust and empowerment. Servant leaders created trust via moral consistency and integrity rather than power. They established groups where followers feel appreciated and respected by setting an example of moral behavior. This strategy is shown by Linda Brinsky, the former CEO of Molly Maid. She encourages franchise owners to treat cleaning personnel fairly with respect by placing high priority on employee development and community participation. Brinsky changed Molly Maid into a value-driven business where empowerment and trust influence the culture by exercising compassionate and equitable leadership. Transparency and prioritizing the need of others are two ways that leaders foster trust. Leaders who listen and share authority increase the resilience of and trust of other organizations. Servant leaders are aware that moral connection, not conformity, motivated by fear, and are the key to long-term success. Nurturing growth and character. Nurturing others, assisting followers in their personal and professional growth is another aspect of servant leadership. Moral leaders help others grow and develop according to DAFT or any textbook, who views leadership as a chance to boost people's self-esteem and abilities. This nurturing leadership was best demonstrated by Williams Pollard, the former CEO of ServiceMaster, in his well-known words, "We are the business of serving people, not cleaning floors." Under his direction, ServiceMaster core values respected God, nurturing employees, and striving for perfection and making a profit were carried out on a daily basis. By linking organizational objective with moral and spiritual purpose, Pollard saw employees as more than just workers, rather as a potential dignified human being. Moral significance. Servant leadership is the pinnacle of moral leadership. It represents Kohlberg's post-conventional moral stage in which leaders behave in accordance with internalized values of compassion, fairness, and a common good. Servant leaders raise people and organization by setting an example of service and listening, empowerment, and nurturing. All right, guys. Thank you all for listening to what me and Nova have to say about courage and moral leadership. And that wraps it up. That is about it. Yeah.